So, thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. As Chris said, my name is Robert Mathers. I'm the marketing assistant at Heart Internet, and today I'm here to talk to you about the topic of building a web hosting brand. So, branding to me is a really creative process where you're constantly working in the realm of ideas to bring people really positive experiences, and that's why I'm really excited to be here to talk to you about this topic today. So, I just want to start with a brief overview of what my talk will entail. I'm firstly going to give a little bit of a definition about branding and brand to kind of explain the angle that I'm coming towards it with. And then I'm going to show you how you can start building your web hosting brand, firstly by doing some targeted audience research, then by taking that research and forming them into some tangible brand values, and then how you can implement those brand values through your tone of voice and through your design. So, to get started with it, what I mean by a brand, it says there, of course, is this is not a brand. You've probably heard a lot in the past the phrase that a brand is not your logo, and I do think that's true. But I've heard a lot of different definitions of brand over time, and I think it makes sense, especially when you're talking about brand, firstly, to be very clear about exactly what I mean by that term, just so we're both working from the same definition. So, the definition that I use for branding, and one I've found to be most effective, is the following, which is that a brand encapsulates how an individual feels about a product, a service, an organization, or an individual. Now, this is obviously, it's a very broad definition, but I think that is important because what I'll go on to explain is that branding is about taking a big view, having a big picture of what you're doing, and not looking too narrowly at it as something that's really important. So, just a few things about brand to explain a bit further. I don't believe that branding should just be part of marketing. In a lot of places where people are working on their brands and getting in tune with them, they will tend to leave that job to marketing because they believe that's where it sits. And to start building your brand, marketing should definitely have input. But your brand can be damaged or made better by any sort of channel that you're using. If you ring up and have a great sales call with someone, then you're going to have a positive impression of their brand. And if you then get in touch with their support the next day and have a really terrible experience with them, you're going to feel badly about their brand, regardless of what marketing you've seen from them. So I believe branding is a lot bigger than marketing. It's a very overall way to look at the company to give people positive experiences. And this is an example of that here. You know, all your channels, your support, sales, marketing, product, whatever it is, it all goes to the customer, and that all impacts your brand. So I also just wanted to explain where you get value out of brand. How is this going to help you make more money and to get new customers and make your business better? So I think there's a variety of ways in which brand can do that. First of all, it can help you get more new customers, whether through word of mouth referrals, because people have had positive experiences with you who are already with you, they might tell their friends, and that could bring you more customers. And also, the customers who come to you directly, for example, if they've done a Google search for you, found you there, when they go onto your website, having a good brand means they're more likely to engage with what they see, and that can help you to gain more customers as well. It can also help you to increase the sale amount per customer that you have. So when existing customers are looking for a new product, if they've got a really positive experience with your brand, then it's more likely that they're going to get that product with you, if you provide it, than going to a competitor. And also, it's possible that you can achieve higher retention rates as well. If someone's got really positive experiences with you and your brand, it's much less likely that they're going to cancel because they're satisfied. So this is how I think branding can help you guys. So, also why branding matters in web hosting specifically is that it helps you to become more than a commodity to your customers. You don't want to just be a supplier to your customers. And I think this is really important in web hosting because web hosting, often people look at it like electricity, gas. They think it's just something that they get supplied with. They don't really see it as something that's got a huge range to it. And therefore, if you can put yourself forward as more than a commodity to the people that you're serving, then they are more likely to take an interest in you and have a more positive experience of your brand. So, getting on to actually building your brand. First step I said would be to start by doing some targeted audience research. And I believe the first step in doing that is to segment the market, to think about who you want to target. So here's some examples here. There's a lot of different markets in web hosting, but here are 3 of the main ones, I feel. So you've got the home market. So you've got first-time website builders, WYSIWYG users, hobbyists, bloggers. You've also got the business market. You've got people maybe who have a brochure website, small businesses, and mid-sized and large e-commerce sites as well. And you've also got the creative market to think about, for example. Part-time freelancers, Soho web designers, and design agencies, whether they be big, medium-sized, or large. So I'd start by figuring out exactly who you're targeting, if you want to add any more audiences to target than currently, or if you want to switch and change to a different market as your primary focus. So to start doing this research, I think these are the kind of things that are important for you to find out. So as an example, you've got looking at their background. What job do they have? What industry do they work in? How big's the company they work for? Their educations, their hobbies, the sort of demographics that they have. What's kind of gender balance that you're looking at? It's all relevant when you're going to be speaking to these people. Things like that. What kind of goals do they have? What's really important to them? And what are more nice to have things that you could provide? What challenges do they face? And importantly, how you help with their challenges and goals. How you're going to be able to help them to achieve their goals and to overcome the challenges that they have. You also want to look at what common objections might they have during the sales process. This might help you to allay any fears or doubts that they have early on so that you can assure them that what you're providing for them will work. So also you want to know what their interests are, what they're interested in professionally, which will maybe tie into the job that they do very closely, but also what they're interested in personally as well. Like I said, you want to be more than just a supplier to these people. You want to think about what interests them beyond work. Also, looking at the content that they consume, this will be quite important later on, is what sort of content are they consuming? Are they looking at articles, webinars, white papers, whatever? Are they also looking in particular places for the content that they consume? So those are the kind of things that I think are important to find out. And moving on to how I think is the best way to go about getting this research. I think Google Consumer Surveys is a great tool for this because it allows you to create the questions that are going to help you answer these, give you the information you need for your research. You can also define who you want to answer them, so you're getting relevant results from the people you want to know about these things from, and then you get it back in a form that's very easy to analyze and to move forward with. Another great tool for this is Google Analytics. For example, you could look for the sort of keywords that are being used to find your site. If, for example, you get a huge amount of people finding you, for example, with the term cheap web hosting, then that would potentially tell you that not only is price one of the key things that a customer is looking for when coming to you, it might be the most important thing, and that can influence the way that you create your brand. Also, I think it's important not to ignore your own anecdotal knowledge. You've been working with customers for a long time in this industry, probably, and you want to, over that time, you will have built up a lot of experience and seen some patterns. So think about what you know about these pieces of research that you're trying to find out about. And also, it's very useful to do this yourself, but if you're more than an army of one, I think it's very important to get other people's opinions on this as well, because that's only going to help you create a broader picture. Also, if you have a very close relationship with any of the customers that you supply to, then you might be able to email them to find out some of these things, try and make their experience with you better. If you're very close with them and even geographically close, you might even be able to meet up with them for a coffee to discuss these things. And you might even get feedback that you wouldn't have seen otherwise because you have that close relationship with that person. So that's the sort of research that I think that you should do. And then what you want to do is start taking that research and forming it into tangible brand values. Just to explain what I mean by brand values first, I believe that brand values, the best way to describe them, are concepts that you will stand for and that you won't compromise within your activities and your operations. So Here are some examples of values from companies that I'm sure we all know. HP, there's our trust, contribution, teamwork, innovation. And for example, we can see this. Talking about innovation, this is something they went with for a long time. HP Invent, they're trying to communicate that innovation is something that's extremely important to them as one of their brand values. And also collaboration, teamwork, you can see this in the sort of imagery that they're using. What they're trying to communicate, I believe, in this image is that the product is about helping you to collaborate with people a bit more. So they're staying true to their brand values by using this sort of communications. Coca-Cola as well, they say that their brand values are leadership, passion, integrity, accountability. You've got passion right there in the advertising, passion for action. I'm sure that we see this in a lot of Coca-Cola advertising and marketing. And also, you've got the importance of leadership. So this is something that I found on their website, all about corporate responsibility, accountability is in there as well, something that they clearly want to get across and be true to their brand values. And lastly, Apple, focusing on simplicity, and user focus, personalization, and fun and humor. You can see this, the Apple stores, they are trying to be as simple as possible along with their products. This is something you can see throughout the work that they do. And another thing, this is a shot from a recent ad that they did I saw on YouTube about how people personalize their Macs with loads of different stickers. If you haven't seen this ad, I really recommend you watching it. It's only 30 seconds long. It's fantastic. It really gets across the fact that Apple is about personalization for the people that buy their products. So, moving on to your values. What I would do to start defining them is to look back at your audience research and consider what is important to the people you're looking to engage with in terms, firstly, of your products and services. It's important that those do provide and fulfill the needs that people want. But also, like I said, you want to be more than a commodity. You might want to look at the experiences that you provide beyond your products and services, what you can offer them beyond simply what you supply them with. And what I do is I create between 2 and 4 values. I have seen the temptation with people when they're starting to create their brand values to think like, oh, this is brilliant. We will define this so clearly. We'll have 10 of them, and it will be, it will cover absolutely everything. But the problem is, managing 10 brand values and making sure that you're remaining true to those is pretty difficult, and you might end up breaking 6 of them within the first month. So I think try to keep it simple, create between 2 and 4, and I think, as I say, it's important to have at least one of these in these 2 categories. What's important in terms of your products and services, and what's important beyond these areas. Some examples are here. So maybe it's important that you provide flexibility with your products and services. Maybe money back guarantees for 30 days, maybe something like that, or make it easy for them to upgrade. Quality, obviously, would be very important as well. Beyond these areas, trust might be an extremely important thing that you want to get across with your customers. I imagine it is. And also, you might want to be inspiring through, for example, the content that you create and through just the general feeling that people get from your brand. And one point that I should make about these is your values shouldn't change. It's very difficult if you've done a lot of work to build up your brand values to then change them and make them go off in a different direction. And people don't tend to like that I've seen, is that you are trying to present yourself in one way and then you move off and say about something completely different. So I'd go for brand values that you think are always going to be important to your customers. For example, I don't think trust and quality are things that are ever going to be unimportant for people who are buying web hosting. So, now this is about how you make your values measurable, how you can tell how you're doing at them, how you can start to make improvements to them as well. You want to create sets of rules for your values. So, an example would this be, say you're focusing on trust, and you want to actually define that as saying, okay, we're not going to do hidden renewal fees. You may already do these. We're going to say that we want to do 30-minute response times for queries. It's going to convince people that we care about what their issues are, and it's going to create trust between you and them. And also, you might say no copy and paste responses because you want to have that trust as well. You can define these values into rules so you can then measure how you're doing at them, and you'll know if you've broken any of the rules, and then you can start to look at how you can move on to try and fix that. So, If you want to then start to make your values even more valuable to your customers and maybe to your own brand as well, you can add additional rules to your values. You can also say that within trust you want to offer something else that has become really important, maybe that you've had as a form of feedback. One other thing that you can do is you can make your current rules deliver more value. For example, you could increase your query response time from 30 minutes to 10 minutes if that is possible, whether you're taking on more staff or whether you're rearranging how you're working in this area. But what I would say about these is to try and phase any changes in. Like with managing 10 values, it can be very difficult if you give yourself 10 rules to break 5 of them because there's so much to manage. So I think keep it simple and go with what is most important in these areas. So now moving on to how you can implement these brand values through your tone of voice. A bit of a definition for tone of voice is how you talk to your audiences across your different touch points. That's what I believe tone of voice is. So to start defining yours, you want to go over the interests, the content they consume, and where they consume their content, those sections within your research. And then you want to also go back to these and look at the sort of tone of voice that sites like this are using, because it's clear that people are being engaged with these sites. You, of course, want to be completely unique and be yourself and be true to your brand, but it's very useful when you're starting to get it working that you can see what already appeals to the people you are trying to target. And tone of voice, it's kind of like the clothes that you wear, and it's about formality. So, for example, today I'm dressed in what I believe is kind of a business casual outfit. But if I'm going down the pub with my mates, I'm more likely to wear jeans and a t-shirt. It's all about the different level of formality that you think is right for the situation. So, tone of voice, you can see different types of formality. Again, I've got some examples from some companies I'm sure we all know. Cisco, their tagline is financing business innovation. That's very formal to me. We've also got IBM, let's build a smarter planet. It's slightly less formal. If they were going really formal, then it would possibly be something a little bit more, business orientated, but they're talking about a big view here. It's slightly less formal. And Innocent, who I think we know is a company that have done very well with a slightly less formal tone of voice. This I found on their website for FAQs. It says, help is on its way, or you're burning questions here. I don't think that kind of thing would fit in with a brand like IBM or Cisco. So these are just some examples of how you can use different formality with your tone of voice. And to start creating your tone of voice, it's easier to be staying true to it if you've got what I call a word bank, which is a collection of words that you will commonly use in your communications, which you can glance at from time to time, just check if you're on brand. So is it right for you to say awesome, excellent, lovely, or something completely different to even those? And here's an example of that. You can also put phrases that you would use into a table like this, things that you use again and again in your communications. So on brand might be to say, search for your perfect domain now. It might be too formal to say browse excellent domains with exceptional ROI, and it might be far too informal to just say check out our super sweet domains. So you want to make sure at all times you're striking the right balance between formal and informal to have a consistent brand. So that's how you will approach tone of voice. Now I want to move on to talk about design. So again, I think the key areas to look at are the interests, the content they consume, and where they consume their content within the audience research that you've already done. So go back to those sites, look at the sort of design that they're using, look at the sort of design, therefore, that's resonating with the people you are trying to target. And look at your brand values to define the sort of design style that will fit in with those. These brand values need to be implemented closely because if you are going after a design style that doesn't work with your brand values, that probably suggests you need to go back to your brand values and think about changing them. You want it all to align really seamlessly. I think if you're starting to create a brand or you're changing it, maybe you'd want to do some design changes with it. I'd start out by just using some basic color psychology, nothing complicated, and a great tool that I think that you can use to start doing this is Peloton. It's great, it's very easy to use, you get easy previews of what you're using. So just some basic color psychology, nothing complicated, is that blue often seems to suggest things like integrity, trust, authority. This is why I believe over time I've seen a lot of very corporate companies, they go for that kind of dark, safe blue. Seems to work for them. Green, often associated with things like growth, nature, environment, those kind of things. Red, often associated with power, love, passion. This could be why Coca-Cola went with that color, and passion happens to be one of their brand values as well. And then the logo as well, just pretty obvious, keep things simple. I've seen people in the past who have an image that they really like that's extremely detailed, and they love it for that reason, and they want to use it as their logo, which I don't think is necessarily the right thing to do, because if you end up printing it on something extremely small, you're going to lose that definition very, very quickly. And you want it to be completely adaptable to any form. I think there's no mistake that some of the best, the logos for some of the biggest companies in the world are all extremely simple. I mean, we've got examples here, McDonald's, Shell, Adobe. I don't think there's much you could do to make these much simpler. It's clear that that is the focus that they've had. And you want to also establish different variations of your logo and where you're going to use them. Apple, of course, have got a lot of different uses of their logo, and I think they've been quite clear about where they're going to use them. As I say, it's about consistency in your design. You want people to be seeing the same logo in the same place. You don't want to change it around too much. Also, icons, key part of creating your design. They have a consistent visual style for all your icons that ties into your larger design style. As an example here, this is just mail, and a lot of different examples of how you can use a design style to show this. So there's a lot of different ways that you can approach it. Focus on getting one that works right for you with your brand values. So also try to pick a single source for your icons. For example, Font Awesome, I think, is one that's very useful for this kind of thing. And if you pick one source, you might have decided, okay, we're going to go with flat design. But if you take that flat design from lots of different sources and put it all on your website on the homepage, then yes, it's going to be consistent in terms of flat design, but it's going to look inconsistent because you might have 3 or 4 different types of flat design on your site, and it won't look consistent. So that's why I think it's important to prioritize having one single source for your icons. So also establish consistent rules that you want to use for your design. So when you're creating some new design, you hopefully won't break them. Things like you might say, I don't want any strokes on vectors. Shapes and silhouettes are always going to be front-facing, and other rules that you have. So you can make sure that when you're presenting your design, it is consistent. So now you've got all this different information about your brand. How do you manage it to make sure that you can look at it in a simple way and you've got it all in one place? I think the way to do this is to create some brand guidelines. You put together all the stuff that you've got into these guidelines. I think they're extremely useful to have. If you're working by yourself, the benefit of these is that you can look at them at any time, everything's together, and therefore if you're trying to check something about your brand, you can do it very quickly. However, it's also extremely useful for other members of your team, so they can all start getting engaged with the brand that you're creating, and also for new starters. I think if someone's starting to work with you, giving them the brand guidelines that you've created is a very quick way to get them into the sort of mindset that they will have when presenting your brand. It will help them get up to speed very quickly. And what I would do is, this is something that you might have feelings about day to day just as you're doing your work, but I would review your brand values every 6 months to see if you want to make any changes. I wouldn't focus on doing this, every single opportunity you can, like 2 weeks you think of a new idea, it's time to go change the brand values or brand guidelines. I think change it if it makes sense to, but don't change it too often for the sake of change. So you always want to consider any changes that you're making, for example, in your design or your tone of voice. You want to think about how that is going to sit within your larger brand as well. Do these mean that it's affecting your brand values, and therefore you either have to go back and alter your brand values, alter what they mean, or maybe the design and tone of voice won't be, the new changes you want to make won't be the best idea. So, just in summary, for all this stuff wrapping up, you want to start by segmenting the market and to do some audience research to start building your brand. You want to be able to have information from the people that you're really looking for that's going to be valuable to you in an easily identifiable format, like I said, with Google consumer surveys, or just carefully documenting your own experiences. You want to then define your values with some measurable rules. Like I said, this is how you can tell over time if you're able even to meet your brand values, if it's too much that you're trying to do with your brand, and to make sure, therefore, okay, this month we've broken these brand values, or we've implemented a product that wasn't flexible, then you can go and look at that, and then you can try and figure out what is the best thing to do going forward, or whether to reverse what you've done. Also, creating a consistent tone of voice across your communications is the next step in that. Making sure that when anyone has some communications with you, whether it be on your website, whether it be through ticketing system, whether it be, if you're receiving any communications from sales, that it all seems consistent. And also, the same applies for the design. You want the design to be consistent across all its different elements. The logo, the icons, all those different things. Pull them all together, make sure that they make sense all together, and collate all your findings into brand guidelines document so that you can look back at it at any time and establish if you want to change anything. And you can also use this to make sure you're on brand. And as I said, it's a great tool for other people in your team and new starters.